Are you this guy? Can't get a single win in all of your Slay the Spire runs? Getting frustrated and want to uninstall? Let me help you out. Coming from a person who has over 500 hours in the first game and a dangerously increasing number in Slay the Spire 2. These are general tips I recommend to all Slay the Spire players, especially for beginners. Note, there will always be an exception to these tips, especially with all the various unique synergies you can get. You should always be reading and understanding what each card, relic, potion, and question mark option is and how it will affect your run. But without further ado, let's help you get some wins. Let's start with the foundations of deck building. Slay the Spire is a deck builder game, meaning the most important skill you need to learn is how to manage your deck. Your deck starts with 4 to 5 basic defense and 4 to 5 basic strikes, and 1 to 2 character specific cards. You draw 5 cards every turn, and once you run out of cards in your draw pile, your discard pile shuffles and becomes your new draw pile. To play each card, you must use energy, and you only start with 3 energy. After every combat, you have the choice of adding 1 of 3 cards to your deck, and at every store, you have the option of paying to remove 1 card. Your turn is dictated by whatever cards you draw. Ideally, you want to use your best cards every turn, but how do you do that? There are 2 main options. 1, make your deck only have good cards by adding good cards and removing bad ones, or 2, draw more cards. This increases a chance you actually draw a good card. So how do you decide which cards to add or remove? Let's start with removal first, as it's a bit more straightforward. If you have a curse, always remove the curse first, as they are always a net negative. After removing all the curses, and sometimes you may have none, you will want to remove a basic strike or defend. Why? Because every card you pick up is always better than a basic strike or defend. They either do more damage, cost less energy, or have another effect. This means you always prefer to draw one of these different cards rather than your basic strike or defend. Hence, I almost always recommend removing a basic strike or defend, as it makes your deck have more useful cards to draw. But then, how do you decide whether to remove a strike or a defend? In general, if you pick up more attacks, you will want to remove a strike. And likewise, if your deck is more defense heavy, remove a defend. You usually don't want your deck to lean too heavily into one or the other, because if you have too many attacks, you may not have enough defense to protect yourself from monsters' attacks. And if you have too many defense, you may not do enough damage to actually defeat the monsters before they defeat you. A very important tip is that you should not be picking up cards every single time. At the start of your run, you absolutely should be picking up cards to add more good cards to your deck. Why? Because it will be very difficult to beat an elite and harder regular mobs with only basic strikes and defense. However, as your run goes deeper, you need to be more selective. Because remember, not only does your deck need to have good cards, you need to actually be able to draw them in order to use them. For example, if you have 30 cards in your deck and you're looking for a specific card, worst case scenario, it's going to take you 6 turns to draw it, given you have no extra draw. Versus if you only have 20 cards, it will take you a maximum of 4 turns. In general, the golden rule is keep your deck lean with good cards. Now that you made your deck the best it can be by adding in good cards and removing your basic strikes and defense, we need to actually start drawing your good cards. Slay the Spire is a RNG based game, meaning that sometimes luck is just gonna screw you over. You may be fighting an elite that's about to do 40 damage to you and you draw 0 defense. Or if you just drew 1 more attack, you could have killed a monster and prevented some damage. One of the best ways to combat this RNG is being able to draw more cards. By drawing more, it increases your chances of getting a useful card that you need that specific turn. You should be picking up a couple of cards that give you more draw. If you can, try to draw first so you can see which options you have to use your limited energy on. A big part of Slay the Spire that is probably the most difficult for beginners is what path they should choose. Slay the Spire is a roguelike, meaning every run is different, including all the paths. This means you need to learn which path is going to give you the best chance of winning. There are 4 main things you need to consider. Number 1, stores. 2, elites. 3, rest sites. And number 4, question marks. Starting with stores, these are the most consistent way to remove cards. As we've discussed, removing cards is very important to keeping your deck lean with good cards. Additionally, stores also sell other cards, which always include 1 power and 2 colorless, potions, and relics. You should try to visit at least 1 store per floor to consistently remove cards and pick up some other benefits. Most importantly, and similarly like in real life, you should visit the store when you have money. This means in Act 1, visit it later in the floor, or in Act 2 and 3, see how much money you have at the start. If you have money at the start of the floor, try to visit the store earlier and another one later on. And if you don't, aim to visit the store a little later on. Moving on to elites, these are more difficult mobs that often debuff you and or buff themselves. Without proper planning or good cards or even bad RNG, elites can easily end your run. In exchange, they give you a relic, usually a positive benefit that apply to all of your combat moving forward. You can think of elites as high risk equals high reward. Usually with Slay the Spire, you will need some relics to win a run, which means you will need to fight some elites. When choosing your path, look for one that will allow you to fight at least 1 elite per floor. Ideally, you have a rest site before or after the elite to help you prepare, either through resting or smithing, or to recover from the fight. So what I usually do is scan the path for elites, see which path has rest sites before and after elites, and also let me visit at least 1 store. At the rest site, you have to decide whether to rest or smith. Smithing is the only consistent way of upgrading your cards. Here's how to decide whether to rest or smith. First, check your map. See if you have any upcoming elites or a series of combat. 2. Check your HP. Are you comfortable with how much HP you have to survive your upcoming fights? If you are comfortable with the amount of HP, smith. If you're not, rest. For non-boss rest sites, I tend to smith if I'm around 55% or higher of my total HP. This threshold will differ based on how risk averse you are, what ascension level you're playing on, and what upcoming fights you have. And lastly, I would say for bosses, I tend to want around 80% or higher of my total HP to make sure I can survive and make it to the next floor, because you'll get a benefit from the boss reward. Note, you'll also heal to full on the next floor if you're not playing on Ascension level 2 or higher. This may affect whether you decide to rest or smith. And lastly, question marks. This still stands. But if you have the option between visiting a question mark or a regular combat, I personally tend to choose question marks. Question marks are random events that could be positive or negative. In best case scenarios, they can give you money, relics, potions, and cards, or even be another store. In worst case scenarios, they can take away a good card, give you a negative relic or curse, take away HP or money, or even force you into a fight that you didn't expect. In most cases, it's actually a combination of both good and bad. So why do I tend to choose question marks? Question marks are one of the 3 ways of removing a card. The others are going to a store or obtaining a rare relic as a boss reward. Going back to the fundamentals of a deck builder, removing your bad cards is one of the primary ways to win. I've also found in my experience, they tend to be a net positive rather than solely a negative. Rarely do I ever regret going to a question mark over a regular combat. The only time I prefer regular combat over a question mark is early in Act 1 and I'm headed to an elite. I would want to make sure I could 100% pick up good cards from the regular combat rewards in order to survive and actually beat the elite. And the very last thing you should consider when picking a path is exit options for elites. Say you're headed to an elite and after some bad fights or some bad RNG, you really don't think you could survive an elite fight. Ideally, you have an exit option, which is a different path to avoid fighting the elite and keep your run going. In conclusion, I hope all of these general tips are helpful. Let me know if they were, or if I'm missing any in the comments. And if there's enough interest, I'll make another video that goes into the various characters and more detailed tips for intermediate players. Good luck on your Slay the Spire runs, and let's all get some wins.